Hi guys, welcome to the 263 Political Café, and I'm your host, Tariro Gurure. Today I have an amazing young man. He's a human rights activist and a former student leader at Zinasu, Secretary General rather. His name is Tapiwanashe Isaac Chiriga, and we are here to talk about how peaceful. Let's start. It's fine. We'll start.
1, 2, 3, go.
Hi guys, welcome to the 263 Political Café, and I'm your host, Tariro Gurure. Today we have an amazing young person. His name is Tapiwanashe Isaac Chiriga, and he's a human rights activist or defender, however he wants to call himself. But above all, he's widely known as a former student leader, the one that used to fight for student rightful to education and all these other things. Thank you so much, Tapiwanashe, for joining me.
It's a pleasure being here.
Your journey as a student leader was very controversial, but it was also impactful in the sense that we got to know your voice. We got to hear more about you. Please just tell me briefly about that journey as a student leader.
I wouldn't know much about the controversy, but it was a tenure which I hold dearly in my heart, and maybe because it was a different time from everyone else who had led before me. So, it was just our tenure coincided with the beginning of the COVID-19 lockdowns and the clamping down of civic space, the arrest and detention of many human rights defenders in Zimbabwe, and some of us were not exactly spared by the dragnet.
Yeah, on that, during the COVID-19 pandemic, I'm very happy to say that you guys worked regardless of the pandemic. But today I wanted to talk about the role of young people and how can we ensure that young people participate peacefully and on a peaceful journey as Zimbabweans, because we know that there's a statement that Zimbabwe is generally a peaceful country, but we want to unpack this journey of whether we are peaceful or how can we be peaceful. If we haven't been peaceful, why?
So you ask if Zimbabwe is a peaceful country.
Mm-hmm.
There are 8 pillars of positive peace. So I would start by saying that peace is not the absence of the sound of the gun.
Mm-hmm.
There are 8 pillars. Number 1 would be the presence of a well-functioning government. The second one would be a sound business environment. The other one would be the equitable distribution of resources and wealth among the citizens. The other one would be the acceptance of the rights of others in the community, in the home, and in the broad national sense of the word. The other one would be good relations with neighbors, our diplomatic relations with the rest of the world, and even how we relate in the community. The other one would be the free flow of information, access to information, and how that information is disseminated. Is there a clamping of media freedoms? Journalists able to disseminate information in the manner that they would want, of course, ethically. And you would also notice that the other two are the free flow. I mentioned the free flow of information, but also the last 2 pillars of positive peace would be high level of education, access to quality and affordable education across the broader spectrum and community. And also the last one would be low levels of corruption. So if you want to judge if Zimbabwe is really a peaceful country, you have to judge it against those 8 pillars. And I would like to say there are no guns that are constantly in the streets of Harare, but Zimbabwe is definitely not a peaceful country.
Okay. You said there are no guns in the streets of Harare and any other street in Zimbabwe, really. But then when we talk about these 8 pillars that you spoke about, I think they're very close to young people. And for me, I've been counting when we're just generally talking about and explaining them, I could count 1 or 2 that I am widely involved in or that are close to me, but the rest of them I am not. I don't know how to describe it. So elections have been marked by violence in the past years. This is not secret. And we are fast approaching into 2023. And should we expect a peaceful election? Should we expect nothing but something that we would be proud of going forward, that this happened in 2002. This happened in 2005, 2008, 2013, 18, and then this has not happened in 2023 as a way of change. How can we look at it in 2023?
I must say, before I respond to your question, political violence in Zimbabwe, particularly electoral violence, election-related violence, did not start in 2002. The 1980 elections were violent.
Okay.
The Rhodesian Front was violent. Even the Patriotic Front itself was violent during the election, the March 1980 elections. You have ZANU-PF in the 1990s flighting adverts where they said that vote the opposition and you die, without any shame. So electoral violence has always been a culture within the Zimbabwean community. But there is hope. Yes, I can firstly say that, if anything, since the by-elections on the 26th of March 2022, and also the resurgence of the opposition in the form of the CCC, there's been an increase in politically motivated violence made by the ruling party, or at least allegedly by ruling party officials, by ruling party militia, and by the state itself on opposition political parties, from LEAD, from CCC, from the MDC, and even players in the civic space. You would realize that the increase in political violence, the increase in political officials openly declaring war on citizens, the increase in even opposition politicians themselves, encouraging people to fight back, encouraging people to beat those who would want to beat them up, not exactly encouraging peace. So there's very much little hope if ever we're going to have a peaceful 2023 election. But it hinges on a number of things. Number one, it hinges on our independent commissions, the Chapter 12 commissions, as espoused in the Constitution, making sure that they play their role in terms of what is written in the Constitution. Because the framework for us to have a peaceful election is there in the Electoral Act, in the Constitution, and many other pieces of legislation that we have in Zimbabwe. For example, the National Peace and Reconciliation Commission has a duty to foster peace, to foster tolerance, to ensure that they also detoxify our political environment, and also deal with other existing conflicts that might manifest themselves in the form of political violence. Because political violence does not just, you don't just wake up with political violence. Some of these issues are because there is residual anger in our people. There are other issues, there are unresolved past conflicts that continue to manifest themselves in the form of political violence. But you can see that this anger is not exactly coming from the fact that you support party A and I support party B. So you would see that the National Peace and Reconciliation Commission, the Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission, the Zimbabwe Gender Commission, the Zimbabwe Media Commission, the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission itself, and the Zimbabwe Media Commission, they have to play their role in ensuring that we have a peaceful, tolerant election where those who would want to inflame the fires of violence have to be arrested without fear of favor, without looking at which political party they are coming from. Those who incite violence should be arrested. Those who perpetrate violence should be arrested.
Okay. I think you spoke about an issue that this anger is not from political intolerance, that I support party A, I support party B, or I support Ningi and I support that. But this is an anger that has been a historical anger. And we need to heal as a nation. And as a peace practitioner yourself, how can we go on about it, especially for young people? Because this anger, we found it there. We are tapping into it. We are violently displaying it towards even our peers. So how can we heal as young people so that we help with the reconciliation with the older generation?
We need to detoxify our political spaces. And how do we do that? I have never seen in my country, for the 25 years I've been on this earth, I've never seen people who fight over politics fighting over ideas. So the answer lies in changing the narrative, making sure that we shun and shame those who ignite the flames of violence. We elevate our discourse from the politics of big men to the politics of big ideas, making sure that it's not a matter of Pamberina Tariro, Pambelingo Tariro. It's not a matter of Tariro Pasinaye or Panzila Tariro. No. It is a matter of, is our politics responding to the material needs of our people, to the day-to-day realities? Are our lived realities answered by the political question of the day. So the moment we elevate our discourse from the big men in our politics and the big men and women in our politics to the big ideas, to the real issues that are affecting the old lady in Mukumbura there who needs health care, to the young men in Beit Bridge down there who needs a functional education system, that is the day when our young people will realize that politics should be a contestation of ideas, not a festival of feast.
A festival of feast. That's very funny. But I think, Kuti, you're making a lot of sense, Kuti. We need to detoxify our political spaces and all that. We are really keen on having young people participating in the political elections, obviously political spaces, so that we see them in council, in parliament. Obviously they can't get into Senate because of age, but in these relevant spaces, is this an ideal thing? Is this something that you see in 2023 peacefully again? Because we want to really look at policies in party policies. Are they allowing young people to participate, to say, I am coming to participate fully, to say ndoda kuva candidate in Harare South, or ndoda kuva candidate ku Uzumba Maramba Fungwe? Vachibvuma here, these people that are old, are they allowing us young people without these fights peacefully to participate in 2023?
I would differ with every other person who has spoken before me in this platform or elsewhere. I don't agree with this notion of young people being allowed to contest. This is politics after all. If you want to be allowed, you could come to the Political Café. Maybe you can be allowed to come and sit down and have a conversation. You could go to Zimbabwe Trust where I work, you get employed and you start building peace. Political parties, this is power, my sister.
Power.
This is political power. And in the continent that I live in, I know that there is the politics of power retention and power consolidation. So if you are a young person and you are expecting power, which I would want to describe as leadership and responsibility, to be handed to you over a silver platter simply because you are below 35, then you're dreaming and you're not built for it. So I would encourage young people to know the electoral system. I would encourage people to fight for their political spaces in whatever political party they are in. It doesn't matter you're in ZANU-PF, you're in Triple C, you're in any of the 125 political parties registered in Zimbabwe. You have to fight for your space. You have to establish yourself as a force yourself. Because otherwise, you'll be relegated to what they call those youth leagues. You know, they are meant to confine brilliant young people for them never to question the real where the real power lies. But to also answer you on how best we could build a peaceful election environment, you should know that the elephant in the room in our electoral politics is the lack of reform. I don't only speak of the reforming the Electoral Act. That is always done when we are about to go to elections. I'm so sure that yesterday you saw the post-cabinet briefing. They said that they're going to be amending the Electoral Act with some piecemeal reforms. In 2018 we had electoral reforms. In 2013 we had electoral reforms. In 2008 we had electoral reforms after the 2007 demonstrations.
Yes.
But there is also a need for media reforms. There is also a need for security sector reforms. These are the elephants in the room no one is prepared to tackle. I've seen political parties, I've seen civil society organizations skating around that issue. But we have to accept that in Zimbabwe, we have a villagized military and militarized villages. What am I trying to say when I say that? We have a military that certainly wakes up towards elections, starts campaigning for certain political parties and certain political candidates, even meddling in the internal affairs of a certain political party. You also have in villages militia that will be trained and moving aimlessly around villages with the sole intention to disrupt political activities of other political parties, to beat up other people. So as long as we don't reform our security sector and ensure that our military stays in the barrack and civilian politics is for civilians, as long as we make sure that our civic space is respected,
Okay.
particularly in the sense of the PVOB, which is very draconian, and it seeks to shut down civic space, civil society organizations, and those who seek to act and improve civil agency across the board. As long as we don't allow our journalists to operate, as long as we don't allow media freedom in Zimbabwe, there will never be peaceful elections. Because peaceful elections, in the end, they are determined by how free, fair, credible an election is. And an election is not credible or free because ballots were counted nicely and correctly. No. Right now, if the environment is not fair today, then I can assure you that the election is already unfair in 2023.
Okay.
And that is a recipe for the disaster that a politically charged, violent election can become.
You spoke of electoral reforms, which have always been happening.
Yes.
This is a cycle that happens clearly before elections. We have these reforms. But you're speaking of media reforms. Media freedom for all journalists to perform, to be able to cover rallies from party A, party B, and speak truthfully what is there without spreading propaganda.
Yes.
Are we seeing this in Zimbabwe right now?
Electoral reforms, media reforms, and any other reform you would want are in three parts. They are administrative, they are political, and they are legal. So every other time that we have reformed our electoral laws, our media laws, we have done well in the legal side. But politically, is there the political will to implement those reforms?
That, yeah.
Is there the administrative will? Are the people who are supposed to be implementing these reforms administratively equipped? Do they know what they're doing? Do the comrades at ZEC know what they're doing? We can come up with a brilliant electoral act tomorrow morning, but do the people who are manning the ZEC secretariat know how to run a modern election? So I can say that as long as we don't deal with the administrative part of our reforms, the political part of our reforms, and the legal part of our reforms, we will never have meaningful reform. We'll just continue having brilliant pieces of paper in the form of our laws. I can assure you that across the African continent, our constitution is one of the best. Recently, we saw people from Kenya and other countries coming here to Zimbabwe to see how our constitution is structured and in copy so that they could amend their own constitution, which means we have one of the best legal systems in the world. But when we have such brilliant laws without the political will to implement them, without the administrative capacity to implement them, then it's all for nothing.
It's all for nothing. It's all for nothing. So we need to push for electoral and media reforms that are tangible and timely to our situation as Zimbabwe. Tapiwa, I want to understand something. As a peace practitioner yourself, you're building peace. How inclusive are you in terms of the older generation, us, the younger people, women, and people with disabilities? Do we have a dialogue of these people in one room to talk about these things? Kuti, we want to heal, we want to move on. How inclusive is the building of peace in your own context?
Yes, we are doing that because we believe that there should be intergenerational consensus. You don't say we are for young people without necessarily also involving the old, because they are still the citizens of Zimbabwe. They've seen more than we've seen their experience. You can't run away from that. But you also need to make sure that there's a seamless transition from the older generation as the new is born. But also know that there's always a need to treat every citizen with dignity, making sure that you include them, but also not necessarily being maybe imposing a uniform approach. Always making sure that you look into the needs of each social and societal class and see that whatever programming that you need to do, whatever reform that you need to do is done at the level of making sure that everyone in the end, no one is left behind.
No one is left behind. In closing, Tapiwa, what is your hope for Zimbabwe? What is your hope for the future and for the rest of young people in Zimbabwe?
I look forward, and I'm very much optimistic of a Zimbabwe one day. It might not be tomorrow, it might not be next year, but I look forward to a Zimbabwe where we have a well-functioning government. It doesn't matter who is there at the time, but I look forward to a Zimbabwe where there is a social contract that establishes the roles of engagement and how exactly a citizen should exercise their responsibilities in a country, how a government should take of its citizens, how the laws should be applied, how state institutions should act, how independent commissions should act. I look forward to a strong social contract, because the problem we have had is that when Ian Smith left with his Rhodesian Front in 1979 and 1980, he left us a country. They drew borders, during the colonial times, and we called that country Rhodesia. We renamed it Rhodesia, Zimbabwe, and then we renamed it to Zimbabwe in 1980. But have we transformed it into a nation? So as long as we're not building social cohesion, we're not building peace, we are not true to ourselves in resolving past conflicts, we are not true to ourselves in terms of transitional justice, we are not true to ourselves in terms of what each class of our country wants. As long as that social contract is not renewed, because we had a social contract in 1979 when our fathers came from the war. They had a social contract. They had what they wanted. But Zimbabwe has not been static. The world has not been static since 1979. So there is a need to redraw and redraft the social contract. That can only be done by a conscious, informed, and active citizenry. So I look forward to a country where the citizenry is engaged, the citizenry is conscious, the citizenry knows their responsibilities and duties, and also their rights. But also the government knows that they should pay fidelity to the constitution, they should pay fidelity to the people of Zimbabwe, and ensure that each side of the social contract holds their end of the bargain.
Each side of the constituent
of the social
contract has the end of the bargain. So this means that we need to have a consensus in terms of how we heal, how we speak, tailor-make our healing. My problem is not your problem. So we need to also know, when we're going into the people, how we will draft this, or how we will talk about this, how we'll start our healing journey as a country. And for young people, they need to be at the forefront of this intergenerational dialogue on healing and reconciliation, and as well as participate peacefully in the upcoming 2023 elections. Thank you so much for joining us, Tapiwa, and it's been an absolute amazing time to have you here on the 263 Political Café. Until next time, thank you so much.